Welcome back to Twist of Fate, a small business podcast for entrepreneurs, startups, and small business owners. Starting a business is one of the most rewarding, most challenging, yet from a legacy standpoint is a calling. And I think that for a lot of you that are listeners, you're thinking about starting a business, or maybe you just started it. There's a lot that can be learned from the local business leaders and people that have done it before. And with that theme, I'm welcoming a friend of mine, Dr. Viveta Lobo. I'm super excited to bring her to this podcast. She is the host of Stocks4Docs, which is a financial literacy podcast focused for allied health professionals and frontline workers. And we all know that you're out there with those student loan debt and getting out of med school and trying to find the path to financial independence so they can live their dreams. So Viveta, welcome to Twist of Fate.
Thank you, Doug. I'm so happy to be here, and congrats on your podcast. This is awesome.
Oh man, this has been a journey for all small business owners. But I'm really thankful that you're here. So maybe we could start off a little bit about, what you do and kind of like where you are in life right now.
I am, like you mentioned, a physician. I'm an ER physician. I have worked in emergency medicine for, coming up on 15 years now. And, I did the traditional route, med school, residency, moved out to the Bay Area, which I love.
Where's home for you?
It's such a funny question because I've been in the Bay Area for 10 years, and this is like the first home I purchased. And so in a lot of ways, this is home, but I wasn't born in the US. I was born actually out in the Middle East, but my parents come from Asia. They come from India. So I've lived all over, and I have lots of affiliations, and depending on what part of my life you're talking about, home was a different place.
That's
so I think of childhood, I think, and then I lived in the East Coast. I lived in New Jersey for many years and did all of my schooling out there. So
you've lived a lot of places, but
I did.
Home is in the heart, though. So
home is exactly. I think for me now, home is just where my kids and my husband and my family is. It doesn't really quite matter. Yeah.
Right. So you have 3 kids and a husband.
I do. I have three kids. I just had my third, and a husband. And I was, practicing EM and loving it, and just felt like something was missing, and so decided to start the podcast. Can you believe, almost a year ago?
Absolutely.
It's coming up on a year, and I'm really enjoying that journey. It's very different. Starting something is very different, but but my husband, I wasn't totally naive to it because, as you know, my husband Lloyd started his own business just when I was getting out of residency. So we kind of swapped. I started getting a real job, and he went back to playing out a little.
Let's get to the start of the journey for you. So why did you want to be a doctor?
If you read my med school application, there's a story in there why I wanted to be a physician. It was an incident that happened early on in my childhood. It kind of shaped my childhood, or shaped my desires and career aspirations, if you will. And it was because I was a refugee. So I lived in Kuwait during the first Gulf War, and I was a kid. I was just not even 10 at the time. And as many of you know, I woke up this morning in Kuwait, and we were on the news, and actually it was my family members from the US who called us saying, "Hey, we see this, we're on watching, ABC News, and it looks like Kuwait is under attack by Iraq, and is everything okay?" And it's like 4 a.m. So my parents are just waking up kind of to this call. And we look outside and it looks fine. Like nothing is going on outside our window. But very quickly, in a couple of hours, we then found out, you know what, you're right, Kuwait is under attack, and we are getting invaded. And it was like my dad ran to the bank and got some money, went to the grocery store and got whatever we could get and stuff. And so that was the first day of then a 2-week journey of then becoming a refugee with the UN and kind of, traveling in buses. And I saw quite a few, as you can imagine, horrific things along the way. And I just remember thinking, especially with, people essentially dying in front of me as a kid. And so I just remember thinking I wanted to do something I wanted to have some capability to do something at that moment in time to help them if I could. Because, they were either be bleeding or we didn't know what to do, or, we were thankfully protected during that journey because they were, I was not, my parents and I were not Kuwaiti because you
Mhm.
can't have Kuwaiti nationality. So we were in some way safe because of that. And so, we were harbored and sheltered, but we did see a lot of things along the way. And so that was the first seed that was planted for me as far as wanting to be somebody who could help in that moment. And that's sort of why I ended up picking emergency medicine as well, because,
Mhm. Mhm.
that's the kind of medicine I wanted to practice. So if you're going back, then that's kind of when it started. And then, of course, I had a big interest in just the subject matter and, the courses. And as time went on, I realized, this is definitely, I didn't know ER at the time. I just had an idea of what I wanted to do. But then once I went to med school and did my shifts and
So
figured
you
things out.
ran the gauntlet. You did the MCAT.
Yeah, I
You
did it all.
went to med school. You did residency.
Mhm.
Now, did you meet your husband in med school, or was it
No,
so you did
no,
it all
no.
alone?
Yeah, I did it. Well, I mean, I had met my husband early on. I had met my husband right before graduating high school, actually. So I've known each other. We've known
Oh,
each other
okay,
since
okay.
I was not even 16. I was just turning
But that
16.
was I mean, that's a very turbulent, stressful time period in your life, right?
Mhm. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I had moved. So we had finally moved to the US. I think I was in high school when we moved. It was early high school for me. And that's a huge change, right? Like coming from
Yeah.
a foreign country. And high school was not the happiest time of my life, if you have trying to be honest. Not that it is for many people, whether or not you travel, you come as an immigrant or not. Um, but college, I found more of my place, but it's a long journey, right? I mean, it's a lot of debt along the way. My parents are not, super wealthy or could afford to pay for all of my schooling, but I wanted to get there. And so, we went to college and then I applied for a bunch of programs. I was fortunate to get into a medical school in Jersey and stayed there, did my schooling, and then yeah, I did cross the river, went out to Philadelphia for my residency. So I was poor for a long time, which is fine.
Right, right, right.
I got married in residency, so, that was the first time okay, there was another income, and my husband, he's in tech and he was working, so that was the first time we kinda had, like, a real income.
You had an income. You had a as doctors. I mean, look,
Sure.
for a lot of our listeners, you should know that I'm married to a doctor, so sometimes I tease and do these things. I love doctors, but so you had, let's say, a sufficient salary to live a good life, but at some point you said that's not enough. So how did that happen? Like where you knew like something has to change here.
So, it's sort of the dream, right? I go to school, you bust your sorry, you bust your butt and you, like
It's okay, Viveta.
I was
We're
like,
all
"I don't
adults
know."
here. It's all good.
And you work really hard and you have this like image in your head of what you want life to be, right? Like when you're done. That's the dream you get sold on in medical school, at least. And so you're like, you're gonna work residency for you're working, 80 to 100 hours a week for peanuts, but you're learning and you enjoy it. And so you do it and you gain all the skills that you need. And then you go out and you get that first job, which is now your attending job. And the
True story.
salary,
True story. So my wife and I, we met as broke college kids, and I
right.
mean, we were dating and everything. What the quote unquote thing she would say all the time is, "Everything will be okay once I'm a doctor.
Once I'm attending. It
Everything
is the
and
goal. Yeah.
is forgiven, and all the rent that you're paying, and all the things helping me. It'll
Yep.
all be better on the doctor." And you know what, Veta? I'm still waiting on that check.
That's not true.
She
I mean,
definitely
that's
is.
exactly what I would say too. I removed, states and cities and homes just to, keep up with where I needed to go next with school and my education and whatever it was. It was all about me. And thankfully he was working at the time. And so, we were able to, have a decent life and, actually, have an apartment with had a washer and a dryer, and I didn't have to go to laundromat, which was like the highlight. If you can manage that, that's you're in good shape. Um, and so, and things were going okay. And then I became an attending, and you just don't realize, now life's caught up with you. As soon as I became attending, we were like, okay, we're gonna have to. I was expecting our first child because I'd been married for about 5 years and I wanted to start a family. And as a woman, there's a clock that's ticking and you have to
Yep.
be cognizant of that. And so I'm like, all right, we have to, if we want to have kids, we've got to do it. And so I was at least, I had signed my job. I don't even think I started my attending job yet. I had signed my job when I had found out we were expecting. And so we were looking for that first house. And with the first house, there
I
was
was going to
some
say home
mistake.
ownership. Yeah. That came
And
up.
and that came up. And we live in the Bay Area. It's not, it's not cheap out here. And so very soon bills racked up and I started having to pay. Now, once you're out, you got to pay back your loans. All those student loans that I took, I had to pay back. It wasn't, money that was like monopoly money up until that point. I would just look at it and I'm like, okay, one day.
Yep.
And then now is the day I have to start
Those checks start coming. Yeah.
those
It's
bills
a lot.
come. And you literally, I tell people, I was like, I wasn't just poor, I was negative poor. Because I owed people money, right? And it was like, so, but I did it, I did it for about 10 years. I, did the work, I picked up extra shifts, I paid off my loans, we paid off our mortgage. And we grew our family. And I just realized at some point, you asked me when I realized, I just realized that, okay, I'm in this 10 years now as an attending, or almost 10 years as an attending. I'm still not living that life.
Nope.
Like,
Nope.
I'm still not being able
Actually, you're
to
more
now
likely you're running a treadmill, if anything.
right, that's exactly how I felt. I'm just keeping up. I can't pause and enjoy any of it. And when I do wanna enjoy something, be it, go out with my husband or go out with the kids or to make a school event or whatever, I have to, like, prioritize and reorganize and think about all these things, and nothing is easy. Taking a vacation and trying to coordinate schedules was a nightmare. And I was like, "Why are we doing this? Like, why are we living like this?" And I'm like, "Do I have to live like this for the next 25 years until I retire? This is crazy." So that was my moment. And I was like, I've just, as an ER doctor too, and as, as an immigrant and seeing what I have as, growing up, I know I wanted more. It's not about the money. It's about the quality for me. And
Yeah.
so I was like, no, I need to slow down. I need to.
It's not just the money. It's also you want the time and the
It's the
lifestyle
time.
and the
It's
other
the
things
freedom.
too. Yeah.
It's the freedom, and I say this a lot on our show as well, and it's being able to have the freedom to choose, right? It's that's what it is. It's like I don't want to be a slave to my job, neither do I want to be a slave to my house or my kids or my family. I want to I'm a balanced person, right, with lots of different facets and commitments and interests, and I want to live that. I want to enjoy it. Being alive in 2021 is a great thing. I live in my parents sacrificed a lot to bring me here, and
Mhm. Mhm.
I wanna reap those benefits. So that was my moment in time where I'm like, I need to do more. I need to figure something out. And I was like, basically it came down to I need to make more money in a way where I'm not gonna be trading in my time for money.
How did you come to the conclusion that investing was going to be the answer?
Yeah. So this is where I think it's very personal, but for me, I was like, all right, I came to this crossroad and I'm like, all right, I have to figure this out. So I looked at options, right? So you hear about real estate, right? That's a huge
Yep.
avenue that a lot of people take, and it's very lucrative, and it can be. And I know a lot of physicians who've done it very successfully. So I had some stuff to read and some folks to follow, and I looked into it, and
But you got to have kind of a pot of gold to start with that, right?
you have to have a pot of gold, you have to have some time, we live
Yep.
in the Bay Area, it's not really a good place to it's not an easy place to be investing in a second or a third property. You kinda have to then go outside, and then you're gonna have to manage it. I'm not a DIY kind of person, I don't know a ton of, like, how to fix stuff up, and I'm gonna have to hire somebody to do all of that. So, there were these barriers that I was contemplating in my head, and I said, "No, I don't know if that's the right avenue for me today." In this moment in time, right? I think it's still a great option, but for me, where I was at life with little kids, I didn't think it was the right option. So then I thought of other options, right? Like I said, I could just work more, but I didn't want to trade in time. That was my big thing. No, I don't want to trade in time for more money. That's kind of defeats the purpose of
You're a
life.
mother, right? Like you're a doctor, you're a mother, like,
Yep.
you got to balance it.
I got to figure that out. So we kind of crossed that off my list. Then I thought of, okay, what about, like the side gig? I live in Silicon Valley. This is the place of inventions, and you can start a business. And I have other interests, and I thought about something like that. But again, starting a business is not an easy feat, and it takes a lot of commitment.
I'm surprised you didn't think about private sector. Like, like you could have jumped into a startup but I guess it takes more time.
That's what it was. It was, my husband is in the startup tech, as you know, and he was all about me. He's very encouraging of me to like, he's like, you come across problems all the time at work. You come across issues and things that could be made better. He's like, you just need to think of a solution or think of a problem even, and then we can come up with a solution and build a company around that. And again, I just didn't think it was the right time. And I thought,
I think you'd be
I mean,
great. I think you'd be great in corporate or private sector, by the way.
one day,
stylistically, I think you really could do well.
I enjoy it. And I watched him do it over 10 years and I saw how much time and effort and passion that needs to go into it. And,
so you're running from it like the plague, right?
and I'm like, I don't think I can do that right now, not with where I am in life. And if I want to do it, I want to do it well and I want to give it my all. And I just didn't think I could do that fairly right now. So that's sort of where that went away. And then they came to investing. That was another thing at the end of investing. There's the public market, there's a private market, there's Bitcoin or crypto. I mean, there's all sorts of ways to invest. And
crowdfunding, like Kickstarters and like
exactly, crowdfunding. There's a bunch of different ways. And so I started learning about the stock market. I just,
would you say that you were financially illiterate at that time? Like, I mean, you knew about the asset classes, like you knew, I don't know, like in credit reports, like you knew TransUnion, Experian, Equifax.
I mean, I knew about them because I needed to check my credit to get my mortgage. Like I knew it on a very personal level, as you kind of learn when I got my first mortgage. But no, I had never taken a finance class at all in my life.
Yeah.
Up until that point, we don't need to, right? As going into healthcare, which is a tragedy. That's a different topic for another day. But yeah,
I mean, we talked about this when I joined your podcast. See, it's such a different reality for me personally, because my father was a financial planner.
Right.
So like from day one, financial prowess was pounded into me.
Into you. Yep.
Like right away. So
nope. My parents, we didn't talk about it. I'm one of 3 kids and it's just not something that came up on dinner conversation. We never really heard about it. It was, you go to work, you save your money, you spend what you need to, and you save the rest for retirement. And that was sort of the only thing I heard. So yeah, I knew nothing. My parents they didn't invest in the stock market. They didn't, that wasn't the way they invested their money. And so I really had to learn it all. What I did find was I found a mentor early on, and which was
there we go.
Kind of which is what started my journey. And it's actually a family member who works out in one of the banks. And he's
was a doctor as well or no?
No. He works at one of the big banks.
Yeah.
He's always worked at the banks. He's an older cousin actually, and him and I were just chatting one day at a family event, and I was telling him, I'm starting to look into investing, and this is his job. This is what he does. He's kind of like a financial advisor, if you will.
Yeah.
For companies, and so he was like, he's like, I can teach you what I know, and he was willing and he kind of followed through with it and he sent me a bunch of books.
That was a twist of fate, Viveta. Like
that's
that, like
what it was. That's all it took was like one person to say, you totally can do this. Like yours totally. And he told me, he's like, you went to med school and you became a physician. This is not that hard. He told me that off the bat because I was like, I just don't know if I'm going to understand it. Will I really be able to figure this out? And he gave me that confidence and he really just recommended a bunch of books, sent me some PDF files. I remember that's how I started reading and, sort of self-educating myself. And
let me say to the listeners, to like our female business leaders or those that aspire to do it. I mean, Viveta just hit on a very powerful point that, the data would show that women in business or women in life don't get access to mentors or sponsors at the same rate that men do. And look at the impact that this just created, just this one person saying something to her. So
yeah, I can't stress it enough. And when I think back at it, it was such a casual and unplanned sort of encounter, and it was just a very organic conversation. But that's all it took.
Did I know you then?
No, probably not. This was like, I didn't really, this was just when I was sort of like self-studying, if you will, and trying to figure things out for myself. And then, but I'm sure, we definitely knew each other then because this was after I had moved out here to California.
And we didn't tell the audience. So how we met actually?
Yes. So Doug, oh gosh, how many years are we going back?
This is a long time now.
This was before you were even married, I think, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So yeah,
probably 2011 11, I think 2011.
So about 10 years. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
about right. So about 10 years ago, I lived in this apartment close to where I was working. And I had this little I still have, I shouldn't say had, I have a little chihuahua. She's 7 pounds. Her name is Nala. And I would take her out for a walk at this apartment building that I lived in. And I would see a couple of times, I would see Doug, and I didn't know Doug at the time, with his dog and Deacon, who was, Doug would take him. My dog would be pulling me on the leash. She has no manners whatsoever. And here's Deacon, who's like, in attention, is kind of like running a military, doing military training with Doug. And he was so beautiful and so disciplined and so obedient to Doug. And I would just be in awe. And I'm like, oh man, I can't let him see how basically Nala's taking me for a walk.
Mr. Deacon he was a Jack Russell Terrier, probably 6 months old at the time.
Yeah, he was little.
But you were right. I mean, Deacon looked like a linebacker. Like he was buff, and he would sit, and he was.
I mean, you had to look at him twice. He was just so amazing, and that's how we started talking. And then I soon realized that Doug was bringing over, or his fiance at the time was coming over to work at the same hospital that I was going to work. And so we ended up being colleagues actually. And then now we're good friends. And Doug is now 3 kids in. This is 10 years later. And it's been a while. So
a lot of change for sure.
And then now me and Nikki, his wife, are good friends as well.
Absolutely. So going back to you, so now you knew investing was a thing. Right. Your mentor put you on the path. You're reading books. Let me ask you this then. Just what was your natural, instinctive first selection for a stock? What really, because that's the toughest point. It's just like, well, where am I going to start first?
So as you know, I am a big sort of value investor kind of preacher, right? So 80% of what I invest in is true blue value stocks. Even though I live in Silicon Valley and there's a lot of growth stocks and there's a lot of hype out here, I'm pretty staunch on, I work hard for my money, and I'm a little too conservative to put them all in growth stocks, even there's a lot of potential and a lot of growth there.
I want to ask you this. Like, I don't take you as a conservative person, though.
With my money, I am.
Very good. Very good. Bravo. So do you think is that a family value thing? Is that because you're a doctor thing? Is that
No, I don't think it's because I'm a doctor. I think it's because that's just where my comfort lies when I'm starting out, when I don't know something, right? Gotcha. So I do think if you look at me 6 years from when I first, or almost 7 years now, when I first started doing this to today, I'm much more, I'm less conservative, if you will. Mm-hmm. I will take more risk on certain stocks, especially with growth stocks that I believe in. But when I first started out, I mean, I think I bought 4 stocks in 4 years or 3 years, 3.5 years. That's it. Right. That's how slow it was. And that's kind of, where I needed to be. But, with value investing, as like, I feel like, you have a watch list, and that's what, you do all your research and you put in all your time and reading and stuff to come up with this very, very filtered list. And then you wait until the price is right. And that takes time. Right? Something has to happen. So COVID happened. Sure. That was a huge event. But
I'm trying to forget that one.
I know. But there's other events that happen in companies that drips the price, and you kind of have your threshold. And so, so for me,
this was 4 or 5 years ago.
This was, I did my first first investment about 6 years. That was the first time I pulled the trigger.
So that's post subprime. Well, honestly, the stock market was performing at the time.
It was good. Yeah. No, it was. I mean, it's been on a relative uptake since I started, because this was past 2008. It was past all of that.
And let me help me understand. So, for example, even your 401k, in terms of your allocations or whatnot, you were just set and forget it. Like, you weren't.
It was default.
Managing it.
I wasn't managing. And my 401k, I opened a 529 for my daughter, because that's what you were supposed to do when you had a kid. I knew nothing about it. I just,
You just put the money in
I
and just
just put
walk
it.
away.
I called. I asked them how to do this. I opened it and I put some sort of automated where a monthly payment goes every month from my checking account, and that was it. He asked me like what kind of risk. I'm like, what do you recommend? Is what I probably said to him. And
Right,
then
right,
there's
right.
like this age classification thing, and that's what I did. So yeah, I had no idea how my money was growing, how it was allocated, none of that. And once I learned all this, I remember this once, like about 6 years ago. I finally went back and I looked at like my Fidelity 401k from now, because I had been contributing for at least 7 or 8 years at that point. And I was like, let's see what I've been doing. And I
You
was
were
like
probably mad.
shocked.
You were
I was
probably mad, right?
mad and I
Yeah.
was shocked. And I'm like, I am, 30 something years old. Why am I like investing in so many bonds? It's like,
Exactly.
right. And it's just, but I had no idea. Like, I had no clue how to read it. And it's not difficult. It's a very
No.
simple concept. And it just took me like,
Listen,
one thing to
you've
learn.
done
So,
organic chemistry. You've
exactly.
done like complex stereo
Right. I did
mechanics.
pharmacology. Yeah. I mean, I was like, I've done physiology. This is nothing. And so yeah, I remember I went back and I changed all of my allocations for my 401k. I changed it for my kids' 529s. Yeah, and I definitely will never pick default again. And I that was kind of how I started, and then I started investing in some of the bigger stocks. And then probably after year 3, I started investing in growth stocks. And now I would
And
probably
then
say my
you were
portfolios, yeah,
definitely
7,
seeing return.
especially in the last, I would say 3 years,
Oh,
especially
it's
with tech.
crazy. I mean,
Yeah,
post COVID, like
which all the tech
economy
stocks last year.
recovery from the stock market.
Mhm.
I don't know. For some of our listeners, you should know that there's an inverse relationship between the Fed's interest rates and our stock market. Like, when interest rates go down, a lot of times the stock market goes up. It's not like a conspiracy or like like it's just the nature of it. But yeah, this is a great time to be a value investor for sure.
Yeah, I mean, all of my blue stocks are doing really well right now.
Yeah.
The tech stocks actually have plateaued a little bit over the last
Compared to what
6
they were
months
doing, but
compared
there
to
was
last year, but that was not sustainable. So
yeah,
I get
exactly.
that.
I mean, Nasdaq was phenomenal. Well,
So yeah, and I've enjoyed it. I've really it's such a new field for me. Like I said, finance is just and we talk about mentors and mentorship, and the what naturally came out of this, because as you know, I'm an educator. I work for a medical school. I teach classes. I teach residents. That's honestly what I enjoy doing a lot. And so I just started talking about it on shift. I would just talk about it to my residents or to the medical students that were rotating through
I
us,
was just going to
or
say that
whatever.
in all honesty, you probably need to teach the medical students like financial literacy. Like they should
Yeah.
be like a class.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I just did a talk the other day with a entrepreneur, and he was telling me, and he's also a physician. He's like, his dream med school, this is exactly what he said. His dream med school would probably take away some of the stuff that we learned that I have no idea or do not recall at all today, and probably add in financial literacy,
Yeah.
health and nutrition, and wellness,
Yeah.
and then probably social impact. That would be my 4th one that I would add. But
Well,
I was like, that would be my dream med school. And leadership, that was the other one that came up. Leadership, because
you keep
these
investing
are
in Viveta, you're probably going to have your own med school one day, and then you can probably do that.
I can do that, right? I can kind of set my own curriculum up. But I'm like, I use these or I need these in my life. It's as important as, knowing my medical knowledge that I know or I need to have, because that's just what completes you as a person, or what you need as a person in your life. And so, yeah, but I'm telling you, I just started talking about it to students and residents, and they're obviously interested and they want the knowledge. It doesn't come to us easily. And there's a lot of marketing out there that tells you that you shouldn't do it, right? There's a lot of marketing
Yeah.
that says get a financial advisor, or there's a big industry out there for it. Not that I'm against financial advisors by any means. I just think that you can do it on your own if you
Yeah,
want
but
to, or at
even
least
if
you
you have a
should learn.
financial
You
advisor,
should
if
know.
you should at least have enough financial literacy to
Exactly.
even have an intelligent conversation with them, right? So
Exactly.
in terms of investing, for a lot of our small business owners, they're going to, I mean, if they haven't experienced like typical entrepreneurs or small business owners, they're going to go through some financial duress without a doubt. Like it's like it's tough for the first couple of years.
Sure.
Self-employment for the first 2 years. We were talking to another guest about getting those 2 tax returns. But I do think that investing and all the things that you mentioned is a very critical function of keeping their financial life on track.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you tell us more about Stock4Docs? What are the things you talk about? What are the guests like? What is your goals even for it?
Yeah, no. So Stocks4Docs, really came about as just, and that's sort of its mission, is really just to educate. That's kind of my goal with it, is to reach a larger audience and to kind of plant the seed, right? End of the day, no one's going to care about your money as much as you will. It's a fact. And so you have to be able to manage your money in a way that's going to be most productive, and is most in line with your life, your values, and what you want to achieve out of your life. And so, I think money, or the stock market is one of the greatest wealth building tools. And so I tell people, my podcast, we talk about some very logistical things. So we talk about, the fundamentals, how do you get into stock? How do you set up your account? How do you pick a stock? How do you do research on a stock? What kind of stocks should you be looking at? What is a portfolio? What should that look like? What are some of the benchmarks? What's the S&P 500? What's NASDAQ? I break it down into very simple, or my goal is to break it down to very simple fundamentals. And because, I am in the health professions, I sort of use a lot of examples and metaphors in the health world, to kind of relate to a lot of my audience. But I've been doing a lot of interviews and so I do, that's sort of one sector of it. I do what we call stock dissections. So I'll pick a bunch of different stocks and we'll just talk through it and kind of come up with, should you buy, should you not? What do you think? And then
Is
what do
Peloton
I
still on
think?
your list?
It's still on my list. It's we've talked about Peloton before. Yeah, it's definitely taken a beating a little bit.
My
But
wife will not stop obsessing over Peloton.
no, we talk about Nikki and I text about Peloton almost every day.
She has referred and gotten so much business for Peloton,
Yeah, she'll keep their
but she
stock going.
doesn't own any Peloton stock. I mean, I do, so I guess indirectly she does.
She
But
does, yeah. No,
I don't
we've
know.
talked about it, and it's whether or not you believe the company is gonna, be there. It's definitely a growth stock. It's not, it's not a value stock, but yeah. So we talk about stuff like that. I was actually just gonna do an episode on Peloton, coming
Sure to
up
be
soon,
popular.
because there's a lot of buzz about it right now. And then I do interviews.
But you would argue that since it's taking a beating, that's the time to buy, right?
Right. I mean, if you're going to buy Peloton stock, this is 100% the time to buy Peloton stock. 100%. If you're going to believe in the company and you align with what its mission is and its goal is, and you want to invest in it, it is the time to buy today. Yeah, 100%. And then, of course, I have interviewers, and I bring in people. And I actually have been doing this series of entrepreneurs in this last couple of weeks, where I've interviewed a bunch of different entrepreneurs, folks who've started their own business, some physicians who've left their practice even and started something very different. And
Which I'm
private market.
I can tell you in my business, I have a lot of physicians doing that actually.
Yeah.
So
100%. I'm not. Yeah. And it's doable, and like, like my husband was saying, we come across a lot of problems in our work every day, just our day-to-day life, right? Like from the time I walk into the hospital to the time I see my last patient and leave, there are problems that come up, and there are ways and thoughts and ideas and solutions out there, that can very easily be the founding idea for a business, or a venture, if that's something that you want to do. And so, and when folks like us, when we're in the setting, when we work it every day and we practice it every day, we sort of have a different understanding of it, versus somebody else from the outside who is trying to develop a solution without having that everyday experience. And so we do have an edge in a lot of, and it's not just physicians. I think in whatever industry you work in, and that's kind of part of, that's even how I pick stocks. I tell people all the time, pick stocks or companies that, one, you have an interest in, but two, that you have knowledge about, that you have some expertise about. We call it circle of competence. And I'm like, try to stay in your circle of competence. If I don't want to read about oil and gas, then I'm not going to pick an oil and gas stock, because once you pick a stock, you kind of have to keep up with the news about it and the buzz about it and the business. At least I think you should read about their financials and figure out how they're doing. And if their leadership changes tomorrow and you don't like the way it's going, then you should know that.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of have to be invested in it. You're buying part ownership in that company. And so that's the way I think about it. It's, I'm buying ownership in that company, and it's going to be a long-term, lifelong relationship. And I should enjoy it. And so if I don't want to pick up the Wall Street Journal and read about that company or that sector, then I'm not going to buy into that.
Mm-hmm. So then, so a couple comments I can make is, for a lot of our would-be small business owners that are looking to go into it, financial literacy is a requirement to play the game
100%. Yeah.
as a small business. Like,
I mean, even more so if you're going to be a business owner, for sure. I mean, personal, I'm doing this from, this is my personal life. I'm not funding a business necessarily right now, but and my husband does. And so indirectly, sure, I am. But, I mean, you have to be able to, you have to understand it for yourself. I mean, definitely the business side of things, but even just for your personal family life and for your personal well-being and future. Like I said, no one will care about your money as much as you will. It's just not going to happen. And so I encourage everyone, whichever route you want to take, I'm happy for you to listen to my podcast. It's not just for healthcare professionals. It's really just a building blocks for learning about the public stock market. And we talk a lot about the private market. I have a guest coming up who's going to talk about real estate soon. So, we'll venture into some of the other avenues, but, just find your jam, find what avenue works for you. It might not end up being stocks, and that's fine too. But I think you have to educate yourself a little bit to figure it out so that you can manage your own wealth and set yourself up for success so that you can enjoy this life. I think it's a gift. Every day that you wake up is a gift, and you shouldn't just be running on the treadmill. You should really try to enjoy it and get that freedom and that time to really pursue the things that you want to do.
100%. So, Viveta, how can my listeners find you on Stock4Docs?
So, I will encourage anyone. We're on all the major podcast platforms. So Apple, Spotify, Google. So you can find us on that at Stocks4Docs. You can also find us on our website, Stocks4Docs.org. We're on all the social media channels as Stocks4Docs, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. So feel free to, get on our website, start listening to our podcast, subscribe, reach out to me if you have thoughts, ideas, requests. I'm more than happy to talk about or create a show around it. I really am just out there enjoying myself when I do this and learning, and as long as educating along the way. So feel free to check us out.
Viveta, first of all, thank you so much for coming. And on a personal note, like, I can tell you are a class act. You're to be honest, no, seriously, you're so humble, given, so much, and you save lives. And at the same time, I think you've really struck gold on a very important paradigm that's in my legacy, like that my father gave to me. I think the greatest value for wealth generation given is knowledge. And for you to share that to the general public, for you to share that to your listeners, to you to share that to our listeners, it's a really special gift and ability that you have with that. So
thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
So take care, my friend. For everybody, if you have any additional questions, or if you want to learn more about Stock4Docs and Dr. Lobo's crusade to educate everyone on financial literacy, please check her out. And you can also download more content about Viveta through twistoffate.podcast.com. So take care, Dr. Lobo. It was a pleasure.
Twist of Fate is hosted by Doug Younger. It's produced by John Lundvid and Matthew Brown at Ezo Creative. Melanie Filardo schedules our guests. Moni Yu designs our graphics, and Enrique Pimentel manages our digital life. Our theme music is by Jamie Bathgate. Special thanks to all of our patrons. You can support the show by visiting patreon.com/twistoffate podcast. Thanks for listening.